Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to start with a pretty sensational story, one that's literally captivated the internet for decades now. We're about to unpack a mystery that sits right at this wild intersection of internet conspiracy, backyard invention, and highly classified government policy. So, they poisoned me. What's absolutely wild here is that these three final dramatic words launched one of the most enduring conspiracy theories of our time. I mean, picture this. It's a nice spring day in 1998, right? An inventor is out at a restaurant celebrating a huge potential breakthrough. He takes a sip of cranberry juice, suddenly runs out to the parking lot, and collapses. Those words, they poisoned me. Well, they would echo across internet forums for the next 25 years. All right, Section 1, the water-powered car mystery and Stanley Meyer's invention. To really understand how we got here, we've got to look at the man who claimed he completely solved the global energy crisis. Just look at Meyer's roller coaster of a timeline. It all starts with a spark of inspiration during the 1973 Arab oil embargo and eventually leads to an actual dune buggy with water-powered car painted right on the side of it. He was parading this thing on local television, drawing huge curious crowds, and yeah, eventually investors. But it gets weirder. A week after his sudden death at that restaurant in 1998, his buggy and equipment were actually stolen, only for the buggy to reportedly resurface way up in Canada in 2014. Wild, right? So here is the big pitch. Meyer claimed his revolutionary fuel cell used basic electrolysis to split water into hydrogen and oxygen on demand. Theoretically, this would let you take a cross-country road trip from Los Angeles to New York on just 22 gallons of water. Think about that for a second. You wouldn't need some massive, highly pressurized hydrogen tank in your trunk. His engine was supposedly doing the splitting internally, burning the hydrogen and safely puffing out oxygen and water vapor. If this was true, it was literally the holy grail of transportation. Moving on to Section 2, the free energy conspiracy, a global cover-up. Because Meyer's tragic death absolutely poured gasoline on a fire that had already been burning in conspiracy circles for years. So the core belief here is that governments and massive trillion-dollar energy corporations are actively hiding limitless, zero-point energy, basically drawing infinite power out of thin air, just to protect their own profits. And this isn't just about Stanley Meyer. The theory paints a much bigger picture, supposedly dating all the way back to the mid-19th century. Believers point to things like the FBI confiscating Nikola Tesla's files after he died, or the tragic murder of cold fusion researcher Eugene Malov. The underlying thought is pretty dark. If you build a device that threatens the global oil and nuclear industries, you get bought out, silenced, or worse. Now, we have to look at both sides of this impartially. On one hand, you've got this deeply held belief in active suppression by, big oil hitmen. But on the exact opposite side, we have the very first law of thermodynamics. Energy simply cannot be created or destroyed. The scientific consensus is rock solid on this. Perpetual motion machines, or engines that output more energy than it takes to break the molecular bonds of water, are just physically impossible. So we're looking at a fundamental clash here between grassroots internet belief and established physics. So what happens when these two totally opposite worlds collide in front of a judge? Let's get into Section 3, Science in the Courtroom, the 1996 lawsuit. Actually, just 2 years before his death, Meyer did face a judge. His own financial backers had grown pretty suspicious about the lack of real progress, so they sued him. And the court did exactly what you'd expect, right? They appointed 3 expert engineers to take a look at the tech. But here's the kicker. Meyer flat out refused to let them test the car's black box. Based on the basic chemistry they could observe, the experts concluded there was absolutely nothing revolutionary happening. Ultimately, the judge ruled it a gross and egregious fraud and ordered Meyer to pay his investors back. And as for that super dramatic scene in the restaurant parking lot, well, the coroner's toxicology report found 0 poison. None. They attributed his death purely to a natural brain aneurysm. The lead detective on the case, Steve Robinette, did a really thorough investigation. It turns out Meyer had a known history of high blood pressure, which is unfortunately entirely consistent with a fatal aneurysm. So despite those terrifying last words, science and law enforcement found no actual evidence of foul play. But while Meyer's specific water as fuel claim lacked scientific proof, the contrast with modern innovation is actually super fascinating. Today, automotive giants like Toyota are using water just differently. They use it to safely cool ultra-hot hydrogen combustion engines.
Meyer said water was the fuel itself. Today, Toyota is developing this brilliant system where water is injected right into the cylinders of a hydrogen engine. Because hydrogen burns at a crazy 2,500 degrees Celsius, water is used to absorb that massive heat and protect the aluminum engine block. So water is definitely part of our automotive future. It's just playing by the strict laws of thermodynamics instead of replacing the fuel entirely.
Now, conspiracy theorists often point to the government suppressing patents as proof of a massive cover-up. And the crazy thing? They're actually right that a suppression law exists. They're just entirely wrong about how it's used. Let's look at Section 4, Real Invention Secrecy, the 1951 Act. This act is basically the Trojan horse of the whole free energy myth. It proves the government absolutely can and does hide technology, just not to protect oil profits. Here's how it works. If you invent something, you file a patent, and normally that becomes a public document for anyone to see. But under the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951, defense agencies get to review your patent. If they decide that making your invention public would be detrimental to national security, boom, they issue a gag order. You can't publish it, and you certainly can't sell it.
5,792. Let that number sink in for a second. That staggering figure represents the actual amount of secrecy orders in effect at the end of fiscal year 2018. That was the highest it had been in over 2 decades. We are not just talking about 1 or 2 obscure files tucked away in some dusty basement. We're talking about thousands of technological advancements that legally cannot see the light of day. When we break this down, we see that while some older patents do eventually get released, the government is actively adding new John Doe orders every single year. A John Doe order means it's imposed on an everyday private citizen. Now, the vast majority of those 5,792 orders are just renewals of older classified tech. But look at those 85 new orders. Some of those were slapped on private inventors, regular people who were just tinkering in their garages and ended up building something so advanced the government actually had to step in. So if they aren't hiding water-powered cars, what exactly is the government locking away in these thousands of classified patents? This brings us to Section 5, National Security, Protecting Innovation. The real geopolitical reality here is this. The U.S. is intensely focused on keeping dual-use tech and advanced university research completely out of the hands of foreign military programs. We aren't talking about suppressed carburetors here. We're talking about incredibly advanced cryptography, next-gen radar systems, lasers, aerospace engineering. The government uses these secrecy orders, along with modern research security programs, to stop adversaries from exploiting American innovation. If an invention has a great civilian use but a potentially devastating military application, it gets locked down fast. In recent years, measures like the Biosecure Act show this massive, kind of quiet shift happening in higher education. Universities are now required to heavily monitor their foreign funding and research partnerships. The old rules of fundamental research from the Cold War, where basic science was kept completely open to the world, well, those are tightening up. With federal security directives like NSPM 33, the government is demanding robust screening. They want to make sure that open scientific collaboration doesn't accidentally become a backdoor for state-sponsored espionage. So the big takeaway from all these sources is that the reality of government technology control is far more complex and, honestly, far higher stakes than the internet lore suggests. The myth says the government hides free energy to protect oil profits and targets lone inventors. But the reality? The government restricts dual-use military tech to protect national security, targeting state-sponsored espionage. The truth isn't about saving the oil industry at all. It's about keeping highly dangerous, cutting-edge technology out of the wrong hands. As you digest this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. In an age of global competition, where exactly do we draw the line between global scientific progress and keeping dangerous secrets safe? Stanley Meyer's story is a wild reminder of how easily a thirst for innovation can get tangled up in fraud and fantasy. But the reality of the Invention Secrecy Act poses a very real modern dilemma. How much should we hide to stay safe, and how much are we willing to sacrifice in the pursuit of open knowledge? Thanks for joining me on this one, and keep asking the big questions.